Hello, Tom. Long time no see.
Hey, Charlie, how are you, buddy?
Oh, super excited at the moment. I mean, everything's happening now. Everything. We've just had a massive case in Spain where 4 weeks ago, the Supreme Court here in Spain has given the health minister of Spain 21 days to come up with evidence really existed. And of course, we knew they couldn't. And sure enough, the day came on Monday and they didn't show up to court, but they did send a letter. They sent a letter saying that they had not managed to find any cases that had been isolated so they could identify it. So the judge has ruled it does not exist. So the problem we've got now is the Spanish are going, so why am I wearing a mask? If it doesn't exist, why am I wearing a mask? And why am we socially distancing? Why do we get fined for going out? Why are we in a state of emergency if it doesn't exist? Based on fact rather than fantasy. And on top of that, what's for? What we've been against doesn't exist. So the Spanish have woken up in a hurry overnight. Mainstream media have tried to stop it coming out. It came out on local television, but we quickly published it from the local television to bring people to wake up. And it's happening the same in France right now and Australia. It's happened in 8 other countries. And so for me, where everybody thought I was bonkers for the last year, welcome to
Sorry about that.
Welcome to the club. Yeah. I am bonkers. I'm completely bonkers because I don't believe government. I don't believe doctors, but I do believe my moral compass.
I knew you were going to say moral compass, Charlie. I think you're missing a trick there. You need to have Charlie Ward's moral compass t-shirts. They would fly off the shelves because that's like one of your monikers.
It is. How's your moral compass? Yeah.
Exactly. How is it?
And it's incredible just to see people's reaction. I made a point, and you get this, Tom, because you live in England. What do they call girls that are married to footballers in England?
Wags.
Wags. And it's a very condescending term because most of them are very pretty and they don't have a degree generally. So people tend to look down on them as not that intelligent. Oh, that's as not that intelligent. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of these young girls in England, footballers' wives and girlfriends, are actually far more sensible than we give them credit for, because they've been telling their footballer boyfriends, don't be getting a jab, don't be getting that. You don't know what's in it. And I know of 3 or 4 that say, Charlie, we can't go out publicly because the FA will come down hard on our husbands and boyfriends because they have a script they have to stick to. But these girls are very, very smart. And we've looked down at them as, oh, they're just wags. They're just wags. They're not wags at all. These are girls that have got a brain cell. They've got common sense. Because these girls understand that the biggest thing with wags, the biggest thing with them is they want to have babies. And the minute they realize that this jab could stop them having babies and could give their boyfriends and husbands erectile dysfunction. And there's many lads, 18, 19, 20 to 25, that if you imagine them dreaming of the fact that this could give them erectile dysfunction, would run a mile. I mean, they'd still be running if they knew the truth. But this is a wonderful time to be alive. And I take my hat off to the wags, the girls that we looked at and said, well, these girls haven't got a degree. They're very pretty, but there's nothing between the ears. What they've got between their ears is common sense. Without being naughty, that is, without being naughty. But they've got common sense. I was going to say 6 inches of happiness, but I changed my mind.
No, I can see it, Charlie.
I know. Exactly. No, but these girls, I take my hat off to you. Not my clothes, just my hat. Let's say, well done, girls. Well done. You actually got it.
Just the hat.
What?
Oh, that's brilliant. The full Monty, just the hat.
Brilliant. Exactly. But well done, girls. Absolutely well done. I think the world of you.
They know. Yeah. It's like, you can't have kids. You're not going to be able to hang around. Can't have the estate. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, these young women want to be mothers, and their footballing husbands, etc., have got a lifespan of 10 years, 20 years if they're lucky. And then they want to settle down with their families. They don't want to settle down with a man with no lead in his pencil. That's not what they want.
They want a good scribe, don't they? Someone that can still keep writing.
They want somebody who can keep writing. Exactly. They want to be mothers. There's a lot more value. There's a lot more value in being a mother than having a degree right now.
Yeah.
A lot more value.
Yeah.
And these girls have got degrees in common sense, and that's far more valuable. So on the number side, I got my little bit out of the way this morning before we talk. We were hoping to have Jason Q on, but I've tried to call him and I don't know. He must be tied up with something else. But it was going to be Jason. But yeah, this happens in life. So Tom.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll pop in. It'll be good to see him. But yeah, the numbers are just, like I say, flying off the charts. You know, they're always constantly there, and I did, it's not come out yet, but I did an episode recently with a new chap called First Contact. Yeah. And he's got a lot of information about piecing, well, one of the pieces about this is the alien element. And I've kind of been experiencing that a bit. I mean, some people know I've been in the States recently, and I've noticed, I've been looking at the sky, at the night sky. And I've had this a couple of times. I was with some friends last week, and we were looking up at the stars, and they would point, one of them in particular was pointing stars out to me, or planets. And then, lo and behold, they would kind of just slowly blink, and they would switch off. Mm-hmm. And then they'd come back on again. And I was like, oh, that's something. That's not a planet or a star, which I first thought. And they were totally stationary. Mm-hmm. And they didn't look like they're kind of a few, 100 meters up. They looked like a star or a planet. And she pointed out another one, and it happened a few times. I was like, okay, that's maybe my first introduction to the possibility of other things. Yeah. And then I noticed the other night I went out and saw this constellation Cassiopeia, which is the W. Mm-hmm. And in there you've got prominent stars, and I'm looking at them, and there's two bright ones in there. And they looked in the they just slowly faded and dimmed and turned off. And it happened to two of them. And that was another one. It was like I love looking at the stars. I've looked at them all my life. I've never seen that where something would appear to be a planet or a star, and then actually almost deliberately, I have to say, I'm just going to deliberately just turn off. Not in a flicker, just like a dimmer switch over 3 or 4 seconds. And then the week before they reappeared, but this time they didn't. They just kind of just turned off. But they weren't motion, they weren't whizzing around or anything like that. It was very peculiar, very interesting. And then I get talking to this guy called First Contact, and he's talking about Roswell and the alien landing at Area 51 in 1947. And I've been doing a lot of numbers on that, and even taking it back to the alien element, back to the Garden of Eden. Whether the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve was a real thing or a metaphor, maybe a bit of both. But the alien element as well. So there's a lot of new stuff coming up, Charlie, and I've been looking at some of the numbers on it. And like Arizona, the state of Arizona, if you do the numbers on that, that comes to 84, which actually comes to the phrase is an alien. And Arizona, along with Utah and Nevada, probably parts of California, maybe New Mexico, kind of the alienish kind of places in the US. And it's really quite fascinating. I don't know if you've had any experiences at all with it, but I find it really quite, at this point in the game, at this point in the journey of when we're getting close to the end line, stroke start line, things like that coming to the front, kind of just a soft, gentle tease into that area is really quite exciting for me. But globally, if that increases, that's really going to be a huge eye-opener.
I grew, as most of my audience know, I grew up in a religious cult called Plymouth Brethren. And if I even touched on the subject of astrology, numerology, symbology, this was all of the devil, according to the teaching that I grew up under. And when I first came out at the age of 23, one of the first things I did was look at the stars in the newspaper, as in being a Gemini. And I was thinking, oh, they match. And of course, you get hooked then. But my understanding of astrology, the stars, the planets, etc., is very, very limited because I've only just started to study it. And for me and for my audience, I'd love you just to describe the difference between a star and a planet.
Yeah, so, and this may change in time because I'm open to the possibility that things we've been taught may or may not be the case or something in between. But the basic understanding of a planet is that it's something similar to, well, again, there's a caveat to this, but you've got Mercury, you've got Venus, you've got Earth, you've got Mars, you've got Jupiter, you've got Saturn, you've got Uranus, you've got Neptune, and you did have Pluto, but they've kind of changed the possibility of that category as well. So we'll just go with those basic planets, and they vary in size and makeup. So Jupiter and Saturn are supposed to be large gaseous planets. Probably Venus and Mars are more solid like ours. But basically, I guess the fundamental thing is a planet would orbit the sun, and the sun is a star, but it's our star. It's our solar system star. And then stars, which usually are the ones you see twinkling in the night sky, are supposed to be many, many millions of light years away. They're supposed to be a lot further in distance than the planet. And so when you see a planet will kind of break the normal pattern. Yeah. When the stars rise and fall, they'll be on the same, they should be in the same position, other than when they kind of switch off, which I had the other day. Whereas a planet would do on its kind of own orbit. And they follow kind of a similar orbit, actually, to the way we're supposed to go. But they'll break across the sky. So you'll see them in a different position at different times during the month. Whereas the stars will all kind of be on this fixed template normally. So yeah, the distance and the fact that the sun has the planets go around it. And there's supposed to be a limited number of planets in our solar system. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of probably the main differences. Some people might say, oh, there's all these other differences as well, but they're probably the main differences for the kind of layman's general terminology.
It's fascinating how the pattern can be drawn and has been for many, many years in the alignment, the cycles, etc., the patterns. That's always fascinated me since in my late 20s, early 30s, when I started to do some research myself. And it's very, very clear at certain times when the planets are in alignment, there is a certain harmony in the world. Yes. And it's fascinating how it has an effect. I think probably my first real check on planetary effects on us is the very simple one of the moon and tides.
Yes.
And that was my first experience of trying to understand the planetary system. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. And I've spent a lot of my life has been living in penthouses. And I love penthouses because if I travel around the world, you spend a decent amount of money on the front door and nobody can break in. So they're always safe when you come back. If anybody breaks in, they had to have a helicopter to get in. So I had many, many different penthouses around the world, which was safe. So you just lock the door and leave it. But by the nature of having a penthouse, you're open to the sky and you're away from everything. Very often in the summer, I drag my mattress out on the patio, on the roof, and sleep out under the stars. And just lay in bed and look at the heavens and look at the sky and just in awe of stars, of whether they're planets or stars out there. I just found it incredible, whether it was here or elsewhere around the world. Singapore.
Speak of that, let's have a look. I looked earlier and we could see Orion. Let's see if we can see it. It might not come up on the camera, but let's have a look. So
where are you now?
So I'm in the western part of the United States. I'll tell you more off camera, but we'll leave it for that at the moment. But
okay.
But so just up there, I don't know if you can see it, Charlie. Maybe not. But literally sorry, hang on. I've got to turn this around. I've got to flip the camera around. Where are we? There. So I don't know if you'll be able to see. No, you're not going to be able to see that, unfortunately. But literally just above me is Orion. And Orion has the three, is basically three dots in a row,
Okay.
and that points to Taurus the bull. And then you have the Pleiades, which is called the Seven Sisters. But they're they're pretty clear actually right now. So unfortunately, I don't think it comes up on the camera, but
No.
I'll throw it back. But we've got this, you can see I don't know if you can see that. So there's a nice kind of nice feature. This garden actually is reminding me, I mentioned this is what got me thinking. When I got there, you've got 39 steps, but of Jacob's ladder, but I think it's more like 10, but there's a fire pit at the top and kind of like an altar. Adam offered sacrifice unto the Lord, and there's a water feature here and another tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, etc. But it's a beautiful place, and you can hear the crickets going. So I'll come back in, but the Orion is interesting. So if you do the numbers on Orion actually comes to 71, and hang on, I'll flip this back round. There we go. So Orion comes to 71, which comes through the words Lady Diana. It comes to Smart, comes to Flynn, and that belt of Orion, the three stars almost in a perfect row. That's where the pyramids of Giza got their template. She had the three giant pyramids in Giza. Yeah. And after the Belt of Orion. And Belt of Orion, if you do the numbers on that, comes to 131, which comes to John F. Kennedy. And they also say as well that the two towers, the Twin Towers, and Building 7 were patterned after the Belt of Orion as well. Okay. And so interesting that both of those were taken, well, all three of them were taken out. And then you've got the Pleiades. People talk about the Pleiadians, and they say some people from the Pleiades, and the Pleiades is known as Seven Sisters. And you've got that train station in the UK, the Seven Sisters. But Pleiades comes to 71 as well, which is exactly the same as Orion. And if you add those together, that comes to 142. 142 comes to I am Nikola Tesla. And Tesla comes to 57, which is Moon, and you mentioned that just a few moments ago. Mm-hmm. And where you and me are both from, England, 57 is Moon. It's George, it's Mary. There's quite a few things, but it's probably most importantly is Tesla. Yeah. And Tesla, you know about this with the medical beds, etc. So it's interesting how everything kind of starts and begins, and it always comes back in a loop. So I find that fascinating with the stars and the numbers behind it. And there's actually 88 modern constellations in the night sky, and 88 is obviously Trump. So it all kind of comes back. Yeah. Well, things are certainly moving forward. It's been a fascinating 18 months, and now we're starting to see. Things in plain sight. They're desperate to cover up everything in plain sight, but through this journey, it's been very interesting to work out the numerology, the symbology, the astrology of what everything means, and nothing is by mistake. There's only so long that you can say it's a coincidence. We're running out of coincidences rapidly, but we're in a good place. We are. We're coming to the end of the game, Charlie. We're coming to the end, and then the start of the new one. So. Yeah. And who'd have thought, like you say, 18 months ago, who'd have thought we'd be in this position where the world is changing? It's the Great Awakening. There's all the kerfuffle of the negative side of it that everybody's aware of. But one of the things I've always been focused on, and you have, is the glorious, positive new reality of the new Earth. And we're going into a millennial period. 1,000 years of peace. Steve Bannon declared that on the waters of New York Harbor. Sure. With the guy from the Chinese Republic last year. He said, sure. The new Chinese Republic has been formed for 1,000 years of peace, the next 1,000 years. I mean, that's biblical. That literally is. And of course, mainstream didn't pick that up, but it's there. It was actually on Governor's Island. Governor's Island. I was there just a few weeks ago, a week or two ago, and it comes to 192, which comes to it's going to be biblical, which is one of those islands just in front of the World Trade Center. World Trade Center comes to 185, Donald John Trump. Just across the water is Statue of Liberty. and that comes to 198, which is President Trump or President J. Kennedy. And if you do the Statue of Liberty, it's 231, which comes to the calm before the storm, I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah. So all these things are there, all those phrases are there, and they all match up. And it's a great time to be alive, as you say, Charlie. You know,
it is. Well, it's great to catch up with you. The other side of the pond. You got into America, okay?
I did. Yeah. So you just have to be eligible to do that, and you know. And I've heard it's opening up kind of more basically, well, in a better way for people in November. So
yeah, it will be.
It'll be fine for people. So yeah,
perfect.
That's a telltale sign, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Charlie. God bless you, buddy.
You too. Look after yourself.
Will do.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, Charlie. Take care, man. Bye.